Waiting for Isfar would mean winter. Then we are performing Salatul Fajr maybe at 7 o'clock. Now obviously it's very late. People need to go to work, they need to go to school. That's too late. So in that situation, we look at what time can we keep Fajr, so maximum number of people can participate in the Fajr Salah. So in winter, the best time to perform Salatul Fajr would be, for example, the beginning time, because that's when you would get the most people. Opposite to that, in the summer, the best time for Salah is the mustahab time, which is the later, the more people we get, right? The later we perform Salah, the more people we are able to attend the Salah. So we're performing Salah in the mustahab time. Sometimes we may be performing a little bit earlier or something a little bit later, so that we can get more people, right, in the Salah. But this is also important, and we learned this from the books of fiqh, that we should try and do the Salah at a time when more people can attend. So that is for Salatul Fajr. Now going to the next Salah is, we have the time in between Fajr and Dhuhr, obviously. So we'll talk more about the Makruh time. In the time in between here, this is the only time during the day when there's no time for, no specified Salah for that time, right? The time after the Makruh time of sunrise has passed till the Zawal time, that is the time when there's no specific Salah. There's some mustahab Salah that a person can perform, Ishrāq and Salah and Duḥā. So even this, according to the Muhaddithun, they say they say that these two, some ulama mentioned that these two Salats are the same, and some separated. No, Salatul Ishrāq is right after sunrise, and Duḥā is around mid-morning or so. Right? So either way, the more nafil Salah, the better. So we can perform both of them if we want, inshallah, no problem. Now we go to Salatul Dhuhr. Salatul Dhuhr, what is the time for Salatul Dhuhr? So as I explained, is after the Makruh time finishes. Now we'll go back to Makruh times and end very quickly, inshallah. That after the Makruh time stops, after at midday or at time of Istiwa, which is zenith, that we explained that Istiwa is when the sun is completely high in the air, and Zawal is actually the time when the sun has moved. So Zawal is actually the time when it's not permissible to perform Salah. But in our, in our culture, usually people say Zawal as a Makruh time. So at that time, Zuhr time begins. Now when does it end? So this is also, according to the Shawafi, it ends when the shadow of everything is its single length. Meaning at this time there's no shadow, or whatever shadow is there is very small. Now after that, when the shadow increases to the length of a person or the length of the object, that is called mithla awwal, the single shadow you can say, that is the ending time for Shawafi'. According to Ahnaf, the Dhuhr time goes on all the way until the double shadow. Right? And why is this? This is also supported by a hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, wherein Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentions the example of the Yahud, the Nasara, and the Muslims. And he explains, he mentions in this hadith that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentions that your timing is like the timing of the people who pass before between Asr and the Ghurub al-Shams, the sun setting. Meaning, if you take the example of the Yahud, it's as if they worked from the beginning of the day all the way up until midday for qirat for one qirat. Qirat is amount of gold, right? So it's as if they worked from the beginning of the day, meaning sunrise, till the midday, which is for one qirat. That was what they worked for, meaning they got paid one qirat. And then he said that the example of the Nasara is that they started working from the midday up until the time of Dhuhr ended and the time for Asr began. And so they also worked for only one qirat. And the example of your ummah or my ummah is that they began working from Asr, being very late, and then they ended at Maghrib time. So they worked for a very short time, but they got double the amount of, you can say, pay, and they worked for qiratayn, double qirat, two qirats. So at this point, the Yahud and the Nasara got upset that we worked longer hours, but we got paid less, and these people work less, but they're getting paid more, right? They're getting paid two qirat in this example that Prophet gave. So the muhaddithun and the scholars of hadith, subhanAllah, the way they extract the rulings of the hadith, they said in this hadith, the purpose of the Nabi was to show that this ummah will come for a very short period of time compared to the other ummahs, and they will do much less work, but Allah will give them much more reward than the previous ummahs. Now, if you look at the daytime, or if you divide the day, the time between the sunrise till midday, this is about, let's say, maybe 5, 6, 7 hours, right, depending on the country and what season it is. The time between here and if we were to take just until the single shadow, if you take the time of Dhuhr, that time of Asr to mean the single shadow, then this time between midday and Maghrib will almost split in half, right? So the timing will be almost the same. So there's no reason to mention in the hadith that they worked less and got more, because this will be 2 equal times, so they wouldn't complain about that. But the wording of the hadith is that they worked for a less time. So less time can only be if the time of Dhuhr extends all the way until here, then this time becomes very short, and this time becomes much more closer to this than this, right? So this time would be more comparable. The time of Dhuhr from the beginning till the double shadow will be more comparable to the time of sunrise to Dhuhr, as opposed to the time between Asr and Maghrib, according to the Ahnaf. Because according to the Ahnaf, the time between Asr and Maghrib is very less. So hopefully you're able to understand that was derived from this hadith, that is the time for Dhuhr Salah. Now, the mustahab time for Dhuhr, in summer it is mustahab to perform the Salat of Jama'ah late, right? To a bit, Nabi Sallallahu said, abrid, let it get a little bit cool. Because if you perform it all the way in the mid-afternoon, it's very, very hot outside. So let it cool down a little bit, then perform Dhuhr. So that is a mustahab time for Jama'ah. Obviously over here, once again, due to people's schedules, right? The Dhuhr time is usually kept, right at the same time throughout the year, 1:15, 1:30, right? In most masajid, no one goes later than 1:30. Otherwise, if you were to actually play the mustahab time, it would probably be something like around 3 o'clock or something, when it's a little bit less heat, right? But that is, once again, the reason for that is we try and perform the Jama'at at a time when more people can join. So that's people's lunch break, so that's when we perform the Dhuhr Salah. But the actual mustahab time in the summer is when it cools down a little bit and it's not very, very hot. And in the winter, it's better to perform Dhuhr as soon as possible, meaning close to the beginning time. Again, we don't do that. We perform Dhuhr around 1 hour after the beginning time in winter. That too, just out of convenience for the musallis who are coming, right? As far as Jum'ah goes, so the time for Jum'ah is same like the time of Dhuhr. Now Jum'ah can also only be performed after the time for Dhuhr has begun, right? So we cannot perform Jum'ah before the time for Dhuhr has begun. However, the mustahab time for Jum'ah in all seasons is as soon as the time comes in, right? So the earlier we perform Jum'ah after the Dhuhr time, the better. So that's in regards to Dhuhr, the whole time in the mustahab time. Now we go to Asr Salah. So the time for Asr Salah, again, according to the Ahnaf, the Hanafi madhab, is from the double shadow until sunset. This is the time for Asr. And it is mustahab to perform it when it's the sun, before the sun has changed the color. Before the sun changes color, we should perform the Asr Salah. So not right in the beginning, but also not too late that the sun changes color. Now, one other point that I forgot to mention in the Fajr time is that Fajr should not be delayed so much that if the Salah were to become fasid, then there's not enough time to repeat it. So we should perform it at such a time that if we had to repeat the Salah for whatever reason, there's enough time to do that easily. Right? So that is a mustahab time for Fajr. So this is the time for Asr. I'm going to be mentioning one other point in regards to Asr when I mention the Makruh times. Now from Maghrib is at all times is always good to perform Maghrib as soon as the time comes in right away. Yes, in Ramadan sometimes we delay the time a bit. We don't delay too much here, but some places they delay by 10-15 minutes. So there's permission and leeway to do that so that people can make it on time and break the fast, etc. Otherwise, in regular time it's better to do it as soon as the time comes in. Now we come to Isha. The time for Isha again begins after the time for Maghrib ends. So that I briefly explained last week in regards to 15 and 18. Practically speaking, majority of the masajid here, they all follow 15, right? Degrees of the beginning of the time for Isha, meaning the earlier time for Isha. That's what everyone follows. That's what most of the calendars are printed on as well. More than 90% of the calendars. So the time for Isha begins at that time. And the time for Isha lasts all the way until Fajr Salah. Now this time between Isha, beginning time, and Fajr can be divided into 3 parts. One is a mustahab time, one is a mubah time, and one is a makruh time. Now the mustahab time for Isha is in the first third of the night, and that too, it comes in the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He mentioned that if it wasn't hard for the people, لولا أن أشق على أمتي, if it wasn't hard for my ummah, I would ask them to delay the salah up to 1/3 of the night, or even a little bit after that. That is why one time Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, on purpose, he came out so late from his, after the adhan, he came out so late for Isha that people had started dozing off in their spots. So the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam came out and people said, what is this? You came out so late, people are dozing off, they're getting tired. He said, well, if I would prefer people to perform Isha at this time if it wasn't for the fact that they would become so tired. So the mustahab time is anywhere in the first third, but closer to the later part of the last third of the first third of the night. Right? So we do it right away. Once again, convenience. In winter, we do it a couple of hours later. That's out of convenience. But the actual mustahab time is later in the night, but up to 1/3. Now the time between the third of the night and the half of the night, this is the mubah time. This is permissible. After half night till the Fajr time, Isha can be done at that time. But delaying it to that time without a valid excuse is makruh. Makruh tanzihi. So it's better not to delay it till after half night, right? Without any valid reason. If a person had a reason, then it's fine. You can perform it and there's nothing wrong, right? But without any valid reason, it's better to perform it before half night. So that too in the first third of the night is better. As far as witr goes, so for witr salah, it's mustahab to perform witr for those people who are able to or who are sure they're going to get up in the last part of the night. That means right before the Fajr Salah. So at Tahajjud time. Those people who perform Tahajjud and then perform Witr at the end, and then the 2 rakat Sunnah Fajr when the time comes in, and then Fajr. That's only for those people who are able to get up at that time. Otherwise, if you're not sure if you're going to be able to get up, it's better just to perform it with your Isha Salah so that you don't miss the Witr Salah. So this is the mustahab time of the Salah. Hopefully we covered everything inshallah. Now as far as the makruh time goes, so there's 3 times. So this also very briefly I had explained last week. In regards to the makruh times, that there's 3 times when salah is not permissible to perform, right? Not even not even nafil salah, and no salah is permissible. Not even fajr salah. That is the time of sunrise until the sun rises, and the time of the midday, a little bit before and after, and the 3rd time is right before Maghrib after the sun changes color. These 3 times it is makruh to perform it's haram to perform salah. It's mamnu', right? That is why, especially on Jum'ah day, if we come in and the time for Dhuhr is almost there, but it's not in yet, there's maybe about 5 minutes or so left, and it's makruh time, we should not perform any salah at that time. People have a habit of coming in, performing tahiyyatul masjid, performing sunnah, whereas it's makruh time, and it clearly says there, salah prohibited, so we should not perform salah at this time. No salah is allowed at this time. Now, one common question that people ask is that if I started my Fajr salah, and then the time ends. Let's say the time for Fajr ends at 5:35, right? And I started my Salah at 5:33, and I was still performing Salah, and then sunrise happened. Now what happens? Salah becomes batil. You have to repeat the Salah, right? So if sunrise has already started, you should not even start your Salah. Wait till after sunrise and start. If you already started your Salah and then sunrise came in the middle, so the Fuqaha mentioned, Mufti Salman Mansuburi Sahib mentions in his book also, Ahsan al-Fatawa, Mufti Rashid Ahmad Gungohi, Mufti Rashid Ahmad al-Diyami, they both mention that a person will have to repeat their Salah if the sunrise comes in the middle of performing Salah. As opposed to that, we go to the Asr time. So once again, the right before Maghrib is makruh time. But for the Asr of that day, right? If a person delayed the Asr, now it's makruh to delay the Asr, but if someone did it, and they're doing it at the end time, and while they're performing Asr, the sun began setting. So let's say sunset is at 8:28, right? And at 8:28, 8:24 or 8:25, you started your Asr, and you were still performing Asr, and the Maghrib time came in. Now what do? You should still finish your Salah. You don't repeat the Salah. The only exception for the Asr time, for this makruh time, is the Asr of that day. Asr of that day, if a person is performing it, they can finish it, and they won't repeat it. Although it's makruh, they will get sin for delaying it, but they will not repeat it. There's no qada, they will just complete their salah. So the only exception is Asrul Yawm, the Asr of that day that a person can perform. So these are the awqat al-thalatha, the 3 makruh times when no salah is permissible. Besides that, there's 2 other times when nafil salah is prohibited. But if a person wants to do qada salah or the farad salah for that day, then that is permissible. That is from the time Fajr begins, and even if a person hasn't performed Fajr yet, till the time Fajr ends, the entire duration of Fajr, no nafil salah should be performed. There's no nafil salah during Fajr time. Only the 2 sunnah of Fajr, and that's all. A person could perform qada salah, but they should not perform it in front of other people, because that's exposing your sin. Right? If someone wants to say, I have a lot of qada to make up, you can do that at home or somewhere else with people not seeing you, but you cannot perform nafil salah. And the second time is Asr, but not from the beginning time, after you have performed your Asr salah. So after an individual has completed the Asr salah, from then all the way till Maghrib, there is no nafil. That is why Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, after every salah, he performed sunnah, except after Fajr and Asr, he did not perform any sunnah after the namaz, because that is not permissible to perform any sunnah on nafil salah. So these are in regards to the makruh times, inshallah ta'ala. If there is anything left, we can cover next week.